I think we are live. We are trying something new here. I went to another room so I could do OBS, and I'm not going to end up being able to do it. So my monitors are all spread out. So we are going to try to make this work. I think we're live. What's going on, everybody? If I could get confirmation that you can hear me, you can see me in the live chat, that would be great. And I would like to introduce Robert from Deep Geek, my faithful Westworld companion here to talk about episodes, realistically four through six. I will touch on seven a little bit, but how you doing, Robert?
I'm doing great, thanks. And thanks for having me on again, Justin. It's an absolute privilege to be here. And hi, everyone in the chat. I can see there's some really good conversation going on there already, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Did everybody see the link? Let me click on this link to make sure the PDF went through. Now, I'm going to make a definitive guide out of all these little partial guides, and I'm going to get it put together a little bit better. These, obviously, well, I'm not going to sit here and complain about the grind and all that, but it takes a lot of work to do this and get ready for the stream. So, I wanted to get a little bit more information in this one. But like I said, I will eventually be coming out with a whole season one definitive guide, or definitive in my opinion. So this one will help you guys though, and it's got some cool stuff in it. You'll notice the first 50% is totally fleshed out, and then it gets a little bit quick. All right, yeah, so it seems to work. Yeah, make sure you guys get this, and I am just making sure that I can have you guys up on the chat here, and we will get going. So the interesting thing about these episodes, I'll just start off here, is we left off our last stream at the end of episode 3, of course, and that was kind of the merging of the timelines. That's when we see Dolores run into William's arms. So let's see, police in the house. Enunciating police in the house. Oh, hello, Alexandra. I am glad you can be here. Yes, let me know. So what we had happen was, we ended off episode 3 with Dolores running into William's arms. And of course, at the time of this airing live, this, created a lot of, well, does this prove that this is only one timeline? What's going on here? And as I said, episode 1 was about the host. Episode 2 was essentially about, the human POV. And then the 3 was the merging of them. Now, for episodes 4, 5, and 6, you have your typical events that happen in your mid-season. You have an introduction of new characters, a new aspect, and we get that with Charlotte Hale, which we'll talk about. You get new layers to the game, and with Westworld, I mean, there's just so many layers that it's unbelievable. But yes, they add some more layers. We get a little bit of a deeper sense of what's going on. Of course, we get some questions answered, and we also of course get more questions. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was it's very interesting, especially once we get to episode 5, and I was just briefly talking to Robert about this before we went on, is that episode 5 a lot of people take as a definitive proof that there's 2 timelines. Now, we of course now know there is. I'm talking about at the time of airing, just rehashing this. Some people took these events that happened in these episodes as definitive proof that there were 2 timelines, but ironically, there's another half of the fandom that took it as definitive proof that there wasn't 2 timelines, and some pretty heated debates came out of that, which I kind of did enjoy. Robert, this is pretty much the mid portion of our season. Well, it technically is. How did you feel about these episodes? One episode in particular, which is episode 5, there was a lot of even dedicated fans that hated not Dissonance Theory, but Contrapasso. What is your general feeling when I'm getting this PDF ready for these episodes?
So my general feeling is that that these are the episodes that start to open up the world. As Justin said, the first 2-3 episodes are very much about quite a closed world. We look at the hosts and they in episode 1 are largely sticking to the protocols, the routines that they've got, the loops that they've got there already. Episode 2, we're largely seeing the introduction of the guests. Episode 3 brings them together. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 is when we start to see this actually branch out a bit more. It's when we start to see all of the philosophical themes start to come to the surface. So I have to admit, I really like these episodes, particularly the episode titles that I'm sure we'll get onto in a moment. But where I kick off with this is Dissonance theory, is that this is the moment at which the two key hosts in season 1, being Dolores and Maeve, when they start to realize beyond some kind of nagging doubts that the world that they recognize, the world that they know, is not the real world. And so that, for me, is what happens at a high level across these 3 episodes, is that we're seeing that these two key hosts suddenly explore the idea that what they thought they knew was right is not right.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share this, because we're going to start off with Dissonance theory. Make sure, let me know everybody can hear me. That'd be great when the screen share does go up. Okay, so we are going to start off with Dissonance theory, like you were talking about. And obviously this is where we have, like I said, the joining of the two worlds. There's no longer, this is where they start mashing things together, is with Dissonance theory. This is where you start to get the introduction of Lawrence, or Lazo. You get the young William and Man in Black in these same episodes with Dolores. What we now know that she's wandering through her whatever you'd like to call it, she's retracing her steps. So Dissonance theory is, I really like it because I love the psychology and I love the philosophy of Westworld. But it's essentially when you have like conflicting agendas or conflicting views. Wow, this screen share is absolutely terrible. Hold on one second. Let's see. Is that a better screen share? Let me see if this goes full screen for you guys in a second. I just want to make sure with the delay.
It looks great to me, Justin.
Okay, so when you have your Dissonance theory, essentially what you have is conflicting, even if you realize it or not, you have conflicting views. So say like you like the environment, but you want to drive, like a hot rod, or you just want to drive in general, but you do care about the environment. So that's, you're dealing with a conflicted, some conflicted ideals. Let me find it here on the actual, the philosophical and the psychological breakdown here. It's cognitive dissonance. There we go. Theory. It's a tendency for individuals to seek consistency among their cognitions, i.e., beliefs, ideals, and so on, where there's an inconsistency between attitudes or behaviors. Something must change to get rid of this. And now this is not just for the host. We see this in this episode as well with the Men in Black, which I find to be very interesting when I'll get to a moment. So you pretty much have 3 ways of dealing with this. We got number one of the elements is a behavior the individual can change or eliminate the behavior. However, this mode of dissonance reduction frequently presents problems for people. It's often difficult for people to change well-learned behavioral responses, like giving up smoking. Or you can acquire new information. This is like the German scientists trying to prove that smoking is not unhealthy for you. You can just look for information that supports the way you want to believe, or you can reduce the importance of the cognitions, which, you can try to make yourself not care about the environment or your health as much. But you can also take an approach to these types of issues, like in a way of, well, you know, I want to go in, let's say you want to go be a professional race car driver. You know, that's dangerous and that could shorten your life, but then you could, you know, deal with this. An example of using one of these psychological methods would be like, well, you know, what's living if you never let yourself live? Something like that. But anyways, this comes into play not only for the host, because obviously they have conflictions that they don't even know about. But I think this is really more clearly shown when we look at the Man in Black. Let me stop screen sharing this really quick. And I want to hear what you want to think about this, Robert. With the Man in Black is approached at the campfire when he's looking for armistice. Or he's looking for the snake. And that gentleman comes up to him and he thanks him because he says that your foundation saved my sister's life. And that's when we see him just totally blow up. He says, you know, I'm on my vacation. I'll cut your throat if you say one more word. So this is a good example of conflicting views. And not only of a good example of, you know, the meaning behind our episode's title, but this is the first time we essentially get a look at who the Man in Black is outside of Westworld. Any thoughts on that scene, or any thoughts on dissonance theory or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, on that scene, I actually think that they're doing a little play on this idea of dissonance theory. What we see there is that, yes, we, the audience, suddenly understand a new aspect of the Man in Black, but he is rigidly sticking to what his current worldview is. He is rigidly sticking to the idea that he wants to be in Westworld, he wants to be exploring what he wants to be exploring, and he does not want the truth of the outside world impacting on him. So actually what is happening there is he is rejecting the advances of anyone who's coming in and trying to disturb where his brain is at that particular moment. So I think that is a play on dissonance theory. That is him actually rejecting it and taking a step back. Where I think the perfect example of this, of dissonance, actually cognitive dissonance actually happening in this episode, is with Maeve, because Maeve in this episode, she is starting to realize that everything she knows about this world is wrong. And there's this great moment when she draws the picture of the cleanup guys in their kind of radiation suits, and then she like tries to hide this and discovers that she's been drawing the same picture again and again and again, and it just kind of, you can almost see something in her. This is the moment of cognitive dissonance when she suddenly realizes that what she thought of as reality, her life working there in the saloon, and the life that she thought she had before that, that is not actually true. There's another layer. So there are then two truths that she is struggling with, and that is cognitive dissonance. And what she then has to do, as you said quite clearly, I think earlier, Justin, is she has to go down one of these routes. She has to either reject the new truth that she's found and sort of go back to her life as being this working in the saloon, or she rejects the old life in the saloon and embraces this new truth, or she tries to merge them in some way. And so what we see her here is this moment when she's trying to figure out, can she trust this new truth that has come to her, and what does that mean for all this old truth that she's had, or she's believed all her life up until that point. So for me, that is the fundamental moment. There's the Dolores goes through this as well, when she's sort of like saying, you know, I'm not sure what I believe about the world anymore. That's slightly more theoretical, but I think for me, Maeve is the heartbeat of this episode, and I've said it many times before. I think on this live stream, I think Tandy Newton is amazing, astonishing performance in this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and that was a beautiful way to merge both of that, because you're absolutely right. Because I do have that in my key events here in the PDF that I just sent you, so I know you didn't even steal it from there. So well done, my friend. Yeah, like when I just want to retouch on it, what you said, and very well put. Those sketches that Maeve finds, you're right. That is a great example of the dissonance theory right there, just because she does have to choose, and it also shows that she's done this before. It's almost like a memento moment, and it is Nolan, so we kind of get that, like she scribbled these down very quickly before and gone through this, so we've seen that she's taken. This is the first time we see her make the choice. Now she's still using the technique of either lessening or going full on with the one way of life. You can tell that she's suppressed it, whether it was programming or not, in the past, because she didn't remember making those. Now, yeah, the programming comes into that and whatnot, but like this is her. She's really determined to embrace, like you said, this new reality. And that dissonance theory in the whole thing, it really is it applies to the series as a whole, because like they say, some hosts, when they find their center, when they become self-aware, pretty much when they realize their whole life is it's like a Matrix moment. Do you take the blue or red pill or whatever? They either reject it, like the sheriff does, like they start glitching out, or they embrace it. So it really applies to that, because it's like, okay, in some cases it might just be easier for them not to. We see that. I don't want to just reference the Matrix a lot, but we see that happen in the Matrix with the one character who does just choose to wipe his brain, you know what I mean, and go back into the Matrix, because it's a hell of a lot easier than accepting the reality. And I've heard some theories from fans, because I know people want to talk about season 2 a little bit, that these hosts, because it's like, well, what type of world do they live in? We know that there's not poverty and there's not this, and they can cure sickness, but it could not be as great as we think it is. So like there could be a decision where they want to go back in. We've kind of already seen that with Maeve, who, for those of you that didn't watch my last video, they did come out and make the announcement that there are 3 self-aware hosts: Bernard, Maeve, and Dolores. But the only one that has showcased free will is Maeve, and true free will. And that's when she made the choice to go back into the park. And this is a perfect example of what you were talking about, Robert. She chose to embrace, even though she knows it was like a written narrative scripted for her. She still wants that daughter. She wants to find her. So I just think it's, beautiful. The next thing I'll move on to, and I want to get your thoughts on it, like Dolores, like, and you're completely right, because Tandy, I hate saying it like that, but I think that's actually the way that it is pronounced, Tandy Newton. She really steps up. They step up her character starting after episode 3. She was kind of a background player, and then she kind of takes the lead role, because Dolores is kind of, even though she starts her journey with William and Logan, it is she's taken a backseat a little bit. But another big event that happens in this episode is when Ford and Teresa go and have their meeting at the restaurant, and Ford is just, it's a total power play. Any thoughts on his true intentions for that meeting? The reason, if he knew what he was going to do already to her, why he would go through all this of showing his power? Do you think there's any chance that this meeting was the meeting that he decided that she had to go, or was he already just decided that, hey, she's messing with my plan, she's got to get out of here? Or do you think that he made the decision to actually Teresa, kill her, through this little meeting they have?
Well, I think this probably helped him in that decision. We see, and I can't remember exactly which episode it is, but when he's talking to Bernard, he says that this happens all the time. People like Teresa appear all the time, have done over the last 3 decades. Delos sends someone to try and keep an eye on him and try and keep control of him. And he knows, try to get the data out. I did a video on this actually just a couple of days ago, if you want to go and check it out. But there's this long-term battle between Ford and Delos about the data that they have got within the park. And so that meeting there is a bit of a power play on his part, I think. A sort of a first way of him saying, okay, you're messing with something that is bigger and stronger than you. And I think that actually was him trying to warn her off. She didn't take the hint. She then went on, and when Charlotte Hale appears, we'll find this out in a couple of episodes' time. Then they come up with this idea with Clementine about how to try and make it look as if Ford is not in control. And I think that was then the moment when he decided that she had to go. I think this was him trying to warn her off. The first stage was him obviously with Bernard trying to ingratiate himself with her. And also because you'll see in the terms and conditions that Delos staff aren't allowed to have sexual relationships, that actually was potentially a blackmail ploy on his part. So this meeting is like part 2 of his plan of how to deal with her. Part 3 came a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great, I forget what channel does it, but if it's Screen Prism or somebody else, but that breaks down this conversation and this whole scene almost frame by frame, and it's very, very well done. Anthony Hopkins gives one of his best performances in this scene alone, and just the actions that he takes. Yes, he's definitely, it's a power play, but I love how not only, you know, because they think that he's stuck in the past and he's holding on to all this. And, you know, literally there's this huge, and we don't have our geophysicist with us, unfortunately, today, but just, you know, steamroller of this, whatever, earth mover of the future, just plowing through, you know, her memories as well as his. You know, he's like, you know, I'm not sentimental, you know, I'm moving forward. And it gives there's a lot of cool Easter eggs in this scene as well. You notice it's his index finger that he uses. He's able to control the host with his index finger instead of, you know, the voice commands. So he's pretty much shown, hey, I have an army. You know what I mean? Like, I truly have an army because I have ways of doing things that you people don't know about. And I discussed this a lot in when I did the Q&A earlier this week, because a lot of people asked, quite a few people asked who owns Westworld. And, you know, it's Delos Inc. owns, it's a subsidiary. Delos Destinations is a subsidiary of Delos Inc. So that's why Teresa, it's so important to realize that she actually doesn't work for Delos Destinations. She oversees it by Delos Inc. And the same thing with Charlotte Hale. She's an executive board member. And that's why with all these plots that we see happening and brewing in these 3 episodes that we're talking about, some people are like, well, why doesn't Charlotte Hale just take the information? It's like, well, or the Man in Black, why doesn't he just do this? Well, if I'm a stockholder in Apple, regardless if I'm a majority stockholder or not, first off, I can't go and to an Apple factory and get their intellectual property. You know, you're invested in them. You know, they don't have the power that people think they would have. That's why they're trying to smuggle out this intellectual property in all these elaborate ways, because they don't have the access to it. And Ford and now Bernard are the only people that do. So, you know, it's really interesting because I really think that the corporate structure of Westworld is going to come into play on a very large level in the seasons to come, because we have to know, if they're planning on 5 seasons, that this rebellion stuff that's gonna be a storyline that's gonna play out, but you're still gonna have a season or 2 to fill, and that's where the broader picture of, you know, what the board wants and what Delos wants and what Delos Destinations wants are all different. So I think we'll see some players, you know, and it'll be like almost like factions. You know, so I think it's interesting to look at the corporate structure of Delos, and it kind of, you know, shows you, it foreshadows a lot for what's to come, and kind of almost draws the battle lines before the battle even starts, in my opinion. So yeah, I really love this episode. I thought it was one of the better episodes of the season. Of course, I love the show, but there's a lot of, I got go ahead and get the PDF, everybody, because I won't go down through it right now, but I have the philosophical breakdown with Plato's cave allegory. That's essentially the idea of what's better, you know, that goes over the idea that these people only see shadows their whole life. So that's their reality. And should you accept the new reality or, reject it, like we were talking about before? So there's the psychological aspect of this and the philosophical, because it's Westworld and there's almost always a philosophical end to it. So we'll probably go into the next episode. Oh, and Amber, thank you so much, Amber Lynn. Yeah, any questions you guys have, let me just go through here and make sure I didn't miss any. And then we'll move on to the next. Okay. Humans are known for their resistance to change as well as their ability to adapt. Both these aspects contributed to our successful survival. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I know, Robert, you just did a video on you did your DNA video, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that idea, and that kind of comes into play because in the next episode, the Man in Black, and I want to get your read on this. He tells I think, is it Lawrence or it might be Teddy? I think it's Teddy when he's doing like the gallon blood transfusion, which I won't even get into. That's too much blood though. But he says, "You guys used to be beautiful. Now you're flesh and blood, and they made you or so much more organic." He's like, and they didn't do it to make you more organic, they did it because it was cheaper, more cost effective. What do you think about that comment? Number one, I think it's first off a sign, in my opinion, of him just really yearning for that time with Dolores again, because I don't understand why of any reason he would want them to be more mechanical. But he seems to really treasure that time. Obviously, that's kind of like his whole game. But also, what do you think about when it comes to the whole broader picture in the high possibility, since they get all the DNA that's actually obtained in the park and they can do whatever they want with it, that there's a plot that I'll let you get into most likely happening. What do you think about that comment about hinting that they're much more like humans, but it's not because they want it, it's because it's more cost effective?
Yeah, I mean, I'll get onto my video a bit later, I'm sure, but I think that the point here that I want to talk about is that I think we need to get into what does the Man in Black want, and what is driving him at this moment in time, as in the most recent timeline, is a need to feel alive. He felt alive way back in the first, when he was William, when, as you say, when he was there with Dolores, he felt alive. He felt love and hatred and desire and so many of these things. And then the bit that we don't know is what happened to him exactly in this journey between those 2 points. What we do know is that quite recently his wife committed suicide, died, and his daughter left, and this seems to have sort of like gutted him out in terms of emotions, and he goes into the park to kind of seek a kind of a touch of reality. He's seeking something human. He's wanting to it's almost like he's doing an echo of Dolores's going through the maze to try and get this kind of self-realization, self-actualization consciousness. He is also trying to go through this process to become alive in a way. And this is why at the very end of it, we see that he actually smiles when he gets shot, because suddenly he realizes that he's faced with a situation where he could die. And that is what actually gives him life, because suddenly everything seems so much more real. So to go back to that conversation that he was having there, when he was talking about that you used to be better, then yes, when they were less organic, yes, I think he is harking back to where he saw these things, saw the hosts many years ago, because that was the last moment that he felt himself, he felt alive. So a slightly convoluted answer to your question. Did you want me to get into the sort of the whole DNA issue as well?
Well, in a moment, yeah, I just want to know that was actually well done because it, like another way I take that comment, like when the gentleman comes up to him and thanks him, for his whatever his foundation, because Cardinal asked, can you ever trust a new truth? This comes back to the philosophical, the allegory of the cave. You know what you know, and you can kind of just there's the argument of what is reality? It is what you make it. So I feel he gets so upset with this guy because he wants Westworld to be his world. He doesn't want to hear about the real world. Even, I mean, I think they went overboard to not like it was done bad, but I mean, they tried to make this as clear as possible, is the way I interpreted, by having somebody come up to him and talk to him about the real world in the best possible situation somebody could speak to you about something, which is thanking you for your charitable work that saved a loved one's life, and he rejected it. So it wasn't like he was just being bothered by somebody being like a jerk or annoying. It was like, hey, thank you for saving my whatever it was, sister's life. And he's like, shut the fuck up, I will slit your throat, blah blah blah. So that's him. There couldn't be a clear example of somebody just wanting so bad to not be a part of the real world, or what, like I said. And if you look at it in that philosophical way, he's trying to make Westworld his world, is my opinion. Like Cardinal saying, he just wants to feel something, but he wants to feel it in Westworld. He wants to go back to that moment. And like you're saying, like his wife died, she took too many pills or whatever. And I always did hate how that wasn't fleshed out. And like, that's why I'm so happy that we're getting the younger actors coming back, because we're going to see James Delos, which I talk about in my Q&A video. Like, it's still not clear if Logan and Juliet, his now deceased wife, his fiance in the first season, are Delos's, or if they were a separate company that came in, and bought in. But James Delos and William definitely have a very interesting interaction that we are getting already some, hints that we're going to get to see. But we're going to get to see this transition from this guy that was pretty sweet and innocent to a guy that has turned into kind of a bastard. But and then I want to go into your DNA thing, but I really want to talk about the name of Contrapasso. I'll just say it like that, because I guess it's kind of it's a Latin word. And I'll just say it like an Italian. I don't know. I want to talk about the meaning behind that, and then answer Broke Black Man's question here. Do I think the Civil War will be one season or more? Well, with the way that season 2 is set up, we have the events of the rebellion, like I said, will already have taken place, and we will get bits and pieces of them supposedly through flashbacks. So I think that what we're going to end up seeing, again, I think that people like the Man in Black are going to be people that we end up liking again. And I think that we are going to see some characters choose sides. And I think that we're not going to so much see, because you got to know they're trying to avoid all the tropes. They're not trying to recreate another just robot versus human war. I think that's pretty clear that they're trying to avoid that by the way they're setting up season 2. If they weren't trying to avoid that, we'd start off where season 1 ended. But they're kind of taking a risky move by actually starting off at the quelling of the rebellion. And yes, we'll see bits and pieces. But I think the real civil war is going to come, first off, within the corporate structure of Delos, by what is the broader picture here and who's going to want what. But we're going to have humans that start to sympathize with the hosts, and we're going to have hosts that I think are going to rebel because they are not, so far along on their path to self-awareness, just like Neanderthals and what you see right now. We wipe them out. So I think that you'll see some infighting with the hosts, and I think you'll see, I think the factions aren't just going to be host versus human. It is pretty much what I'm getting at. But did you want to go over the meaning? Now, Dante's Inferno is a heavy theme throughout this whole show. Did you want to go over the meaning behind episode's 5's title?
Yeah, happy to. Can I just one thing I just wanted, before we get onto that, just to point out, was that actually that conversation that the Man in Black had was one of the few moments where we actually get a glimpse of the outside world by implication, because that random guest basically said, "You're you're famous. Out in the real world, people know who you are, and people know that you're the boss of this place, and people know that you've done lots of charitable work. So the Man in Black we often see as being this person who wanders around Westworld Park, but actually he's probably the equivalent of, I don't know, Steve Jobs kind of fame. That's the kind of figure that we're looking at, and I think we're going to see in season 2, we're going to see the rise of this character through William in the old timeline. But just sort of moving on to the question you asked about Contrapasso. So this is quite literally, it's to suffer the opposite is what it means, so it's, if you're thinking of Dante's Inferno, or if you're thinking of sort of like Greek myths, it's this kind of feeling where somebody gets punished by suffering the opposite of what they have done. So it's an ironic suffering that you get what you deserve because you meted something out on the others. So, for example, and this I think applies across the whole of the Westworld season 1, Contrapasso, to suffer the opposite, is about humans for so long have been doing so many bad things to the hosts. Contrapasso would mean that the humans, those who are most responsible for it, the guests and the board of Delos who are there, they should suffer those very same things at the hands of the hosts. So that is what this word is about. It's about suffering, the ironic suffering of the thing that you have put on somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna see if I can, let me share this with everybody. And I think that the imagery that we get in this episode is also great, because speaking of Dante's Inferno, let me find it on here. When we look at not only the corporate structure of Delos, but the way that the building itself is actually set up. Here we go. Look at the escalator that we have here, about how Westworld literally is a reverse skyscraper. And to get to the bottom of things, look at their corporate map. You literally have to get to the bottom of things. So it's like a metaphorical and, actual, physical reality that you have to, if you want to dive deeper into Delos, then you need to actually dive deeper into the earth that, the company is embedded in. And I also, there's a weird connection with the whole Dante's Inferno and, the punishments for, these sins, which Dante's Inferno is all about. And in the former episode, or the prior episode, we had Contrapasso, or not Contrapasso. When we had the Stray, we saw him navigating to go find that satellite, and arguably using the stars to do so. Astrologists, back at the time when Dante's Inferno was, written, the Abrahamic religions, when it was highly believed by the Abrahamic religions, astrology was a sin. So following the stars would get you beheaded. So it was kind of like a metaphor for, the hosts practicing a sin. And there's the whole argument of, can hosts technically commit sin if you don't have free will, which also goes on to the humans. But I think great point with the breakdown on that. But what I really like about this episode is you get your first interaction where it's not Bernard or Arnold talking to Dolores, and we get this in Pariah, which we will get to. And these are the episodes that I was talking about that really started to make people very, very hostile, actually, towards each other. Like I said, I run the amino. When we meet Lawrence with the Man in Black, he already calls him Lawrence, and he saves him. You know, it's kind of like it's right out of a Western movie where he saves him from the noose, which lazo also means loop and also means noose. So lots of metaphors there. But we see him with interacting both with the Man in Black and then the younger William in these episodes. And it came down to a big argument about how quick could they technically get, because we end up seeing Lawrence being drained for blood by the Man in Black to transfer into Teddy, as we were just talking about. So it's like, could they have gotten Lawrence or El Lazo back, you know, into the park after going through the butchers? And I got to figure there's got to be beauticians there as well, especially for the women, because their makeup's done and all that. So there's got to be a few different departments in time for that to jive. So some people took this as definitive proof that the 2 timeline theory was absolutely correct. So there's no way it could happen. And then other people took it as definitive proof that it wasn't 2 timelines. And it was a very interesting time. But what we see in the first original timeline, the 30 years ago, is Dolores you really utilizing one of the they utilize when they tell this narrative, the power of the story is when she's finally able to use the gun and protect William. She tells him, I found a story where I wasn't the damsel. So I found that to be very, very, very powerful. And to go back to the idea of that, you just accept what reality you choose to accept. So she found a narrative where she wasn't the victim and she used it. So arguably, who's the real Dolores? You know what I mean? The whole journey through Pariah was a little bit of a mindfuck for me when I first watched it. I'd like to get your opinion on it. What did you think about Pariah, especially since that seems to be the reason that Logan claims they should up their stake in the company? And it also seems to be a place where obviously you can be hurt. Logan's roughed up pretty heavily in this part of the park. It seems the further you go out, the more the hosts are able to harm you. I mean, he is strangled. He's bitch slapped quite a few times, for lack of a better word. And this is not only the first time we see Dolores break out of her narrative and use violence, but we see a great scene where Logan is being strangled by one of the hosts. And now William, he points his gun, but takes a little bit to shoot him. And I want to know your thoughts on this. Do you think this was him thinking, maybe I should just let this guy die, Logan? Or was this him, another example of him seeing the hosts as human? Because young William obviously has quite a different view. Because he takes a moment, to shoot him, a moment like a real person would take before shooting a real person. I mean, it really takes a lot for him to pull that trigger on something that is technically just a machine, or at least in their point of view.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think what we've seen with William over the first 5, 6, 7 episodes is each it wasn't really not episode 1, obviously, but each episode he takes an extra step towards becoming the Man in Black. And so you see that he is going past an ethical boundary that he had to start with. When he first arrives in the park, he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to shoot anyone. He doesn't want to get any kind of emotional attachment or sexual attachment to any of the hosts. He doesn't want any of that. Each episode, he breaks down one of these barriers. And so here what is happening is that he's breaking down another one of these barriers in his own mind. And once enough of these have gone, he is then fully on the path to becoming a Man in Black. I mean, I think the Man in Black. So I think there are 2 things I would say here actually about Pariah that I think are really fascinating. The first is in relation to the episode title. We've been talked about Contrapasso. I think this is probably the hook within this episode for that episode title, because you see Logan. This is the moment when Logan actually opens up and says to William, you know what, the only reason why I'm supporting you in the company is because I don't think that you're much of a threat to me. I don't think that you're enough of a man to take me on, effectively, is what he's kind of saying. And at the end of this episode, we see that William actually leaves him there in this really precarious situation, as you say, getting beaten up. He's left him to the Confederados. And in a way, what he's done is he's shown that he is that person that Logan said he was not. So this is a form of this kind of contrapasso. Logan is suffering the fate that he was sort of implicitly putting onto William. So I think this is that contrapasso moment. The other thing I would say about Pariah here is that I think this is part of the maze for Dolores that has been put there. So the maze is not a physical maze, as we all know.
Thank you. Not as we all know. Some people still stick to it's a physical maze. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. I'll be the one to be a dick about that. That, like I said in my last video, when the people were matching up like the half Orion with the maze, because there's a shit ton of lines in the maze, and they're like, "Oh, look, see, it's part of the. It's a path throughout the maze." I'm like, that's the one theory I'm gonna say it's fucking stupid. All right. So sorry. I was just wanted to be a dick about that one. Yes, it is not a physical thing, and I don't care. For the first watch through, you think it's a physical thing, you should take a good look at yourself in the mirror and think, what are you thinking? That's just my opinion. Go ahead, though. Go ahead to get my rant out.
Absolutely. It's your live stream. You can be a dick as much as you like. That's fine. The maze is, in effect, this is the journey towards self-consciousness. And so this, what it is a series of decision points for Dolores at which she can actually choose to break free from the loops that she's in, from the programming that she's got, and actually start to try and realize that the voices in her mind are herself, not anyone else. So what we've got going on here is I think one of the key moments in the maze for Dolores as she actually breaks free. And as you say, when she's saying, and I found a story when I'm not the damsel, this is when she's actually taking up the gun and shooting people. This is her breaking free from her programming. So I think this is actually quite a crucial moment. I think that everything that's built up to this and everything that comes after this is perhaps not as important as this kind of crucial, and it's episode 5, it's halfway through the season. For me, this is the crucial moment in her development towards consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say thank you to Costume Co. And I don't see, I'm going to go ahead and link your channel. I can't praise it enough out there. And then I want to really quickly touch back on Pariah, because Pariah is very, very interesting to me. And Pariah is like I said, this show is so good to go back and watch, because you know, I'm sitting here making I will admit, one of the issues with making these PDFs is this information gets so jumbled in my head by the time of these live streams and I'm working into it. I can't remember which episode some of this stuff happened in. Thank you guys so much for those super chats. And if you have a question, let me know. Oh, but I got to put a wrench on you. Hold on really quick. There we go. Okay. So, in Pariah, and I want your thought, because that, again, beautiful explanation. This is from the guy that said he wasn't prepared for this stream.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm like doing this PDF, and then I look up, I'm like, shit, I got to do the stream. I'm like, oh man, I'm like, all that information.
I should show you, if you look right now, quite how little prepared I am.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe that's, you know, I'm going with this super fusion drink that's supposed to make you smarter. It's not working. But anyways, in Pariah, like as you said, like you know, she's making decisions and stuff like that. There's a little quote here that I have in my PDF. It's beautiful in its own way. Now, Dolores, what's interesting about her journey, which we obviously are seeing her through now, obviously, I'm not going to be a dick about that. You know, first watch through, it's not so obvious that you're seeing her go and retrace her steps from the journey with William. But here's the thing, when they're in Pariah, when she's there with William, now this is just my take on it, and I want to hear yours. That's not her first time there, because she is then having how she sees herself is me. I take that as she's flashing back that she's the first time she's made this journey. And this jibes with what we've been talking about in what the show, you know, how the show represents the maze is sometimes, you know, they get to the center and they reject it. So I think a lot of us are, you know, even until the second watch through, I believe that was definitely her first, you know, she was retracing her original journey. But I think that she is also, not to make it any more complicated than it needs to be, but she's retracing when she's doing it with Jimmy or William, Jimmy Simpson. I call him first name basis because he tweeted his, you know, confirmation to me. So I think we're pals. Anyways, with William, I believe that she is retracing those steps as well. That's not the first time she's done that, because she sees herself in Pariah, which leads you to believe that she's having a flashback. Because the only time we see her do that is when she's having flashbacks. And here's this: when she is sketching on that, you know, whatever, like dirty blanket, he asks her what she's sketching, and she's sketching that cannon pass that they come to. So before they come to it. So obviously, unless it's just coded into her, which isn't part of the story so far, she's made this journey before. I just believe that she, again, you know, like we see with Maeve, we see her, it's that momentum moment where she sees all the other sketches and all the other times that she's done this. It's essentially the same exact thing. We aren't seeing the first time that they've taken these steps, you know. We're seeing the first time that these steps get followed through all the way. Do you think what I'm saying is crazy, or do you think there's some substance to it? That when we see her in the 30-year back timeline, that is not her first time going to Pariah, and that she is sketching that on the train before they arrive there because of that reason, that she has made this journey before. She just has never completed it until what we now know to be 60 years later.
Yes, I agree. And to everyone who said cheers back at you. I before I answer that one, can I just say I want to echo your comments. Costume CO is an amazing channel. If you've not checked it out, go and have a look at it. It's that there's so much really interesting information there about how costumes support character across a whole range of different shows. So do please go and have a look for that. And it's great to see quite a few of my patrons and subscribers here in the chat. Hi guys, it's great to see you. In answer to your question, I think yes, what we see in season 1. We actually see, I think, 3 separate time streams. We often think of there being just 2, but there are at least 3. The first one is the one that is related to Dolores and Arnold. So it's not so all of these shots that you see when you get Dolores and Bernard when they're talking to one another, that's Dolores and Arnold way back before the park even opened, and that is him setting up the maze for her to go through. So yes, she goes through it at that point. She goes through it again with William, and then she goes through it again for the 3rd time in the sort of the present day when we see the Man in Black. And there are probably lots of other times that she has gone through the maze. It's only really at the last time, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, in the next episode of this live stream, or perhaps the one after that, when we see Ford there in underneath the chapel, and she has that conversation with him there. That's the time that she actually finally completes the maze, because the maze is not just a matter of going through some hoops to physically get to a place. It is going through a number of decision points in order to allow her to break free from her programming and understand who she is, and that she is a person in and of her own right. So that, again, a long rambling answer to you, but the short answer is yes, we've got at least 3 different time streams, and when she goes to Pariah, she has been there before at least once.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and because and I always find myself doing this on the stream. Like, you need my validation. I'm like, you are. I'm gonna get a bell like ding ding ding. You are right on that. Because and when I say stuff like that, I just mean like, because like when I say like you're right on that to people, like, that's right, is because I mean, Robert, and now everybody that sees PDFs know that I've read like all the website data and all the stuff that's been hacked. So that's official stuff from the show, like what they have revealed. So I take, it's canon. So it's canon that we do see the 3 timelines that Robert's just perfectly described. So, and what I'm suggesting and what Robert agreed with me on, so I'm making that canon, is that we are seeing bits and pieces of a 4th. It's not as important as the 3, but we're seeing events, and it jives with the whole philosophy or ideals of, the show of, they bounce back. So it's not the first time. They just, they didn't want to do 10 seasons before of them failing. I think that what's really interesting here, and I'm gonna have to credit another content creator for one part of this, was you see now, first off, you get a really cool scene, because I think Westworld, I always have to ask that question. Does Westworld, because I'm a big guy in philosophy. I love looking at the deeper meaning of things, and I even get mad when other people don't, because I'm a jerk. I'm like, why aren't you looking at this in a deeper sense, But there are, like, if I wasn't a content creator and wasn't like looking at shows like how can I make content about that, would I enjoy like Westworld, like just for like sit back, have a few beers and watch the action? And in this and I think yes, you would. I mean, I think that you get that with Hector's, obviously his constant raid, which the Man in Black, it shows how much he's explored. How he says, I've read every page of these stories except for the last one. He tells Hector, because that's when we get introduced to him formally in these episodes, and he says there's nothing, you're not going to find what you're looking for in that safe. So that shows that at one point the Man in Black did that narrative. You know what I mean? Like he actually went to that safe, and he knows that's what's hacked. He knows what people's loops are, and that's why it's weird that he doesn't know about Armistice, but that's for another time. But anyways, what I was talking about is we get Dolores, first off, who, Ford shows up in Pariah. And we get that badass scene where the Man in Black reaches for him, and Teddy, goes from being dead to being the Terminator, and flips the knife. It's pretty badass. That's one of those just it's cool bro scenes. But what we get then is, we get for the first time him sitting with Dolores, as we usually see Arnold or Bernard, or as we find out Dolores sitting with Dolores in the end, interrogating her and talking about dreams and how dreams are just another power of the story speech, which I won't dive into. But we see him asking questions that he knows, like, I know partially this is for like, the suspense and for the twist, because they want you to believe that Ford is working against them. But I tend to believe that Ford is making sure that they're lying to him. This happens twice in these episodes. Now, the one time I didn't even realize, or I didn't remember until the Bridges last video, which he has an interesting theory that I'm not going to buy into. I think he's a great content creator, but he brings up some really valid points within this theory. And one of his was that he was testing, like young Ford, the host of himself, about when he does the dog story, because he wants to know if he killed the dog. And he knows that young Ford lies to him. This is essentially the same thing that happens with Dolores in this scene, because we have him talking to Dolores. She's asking the last time he talked to Arnold, blah, blah, blah. They go through a whole thing. And then you see her say to the voice in her head, he doesn't know anything. So it shows deception. I believe this is Ford making sure that they are progressing. So that would lead me to believe that he's also not just doing this with Dolores, but he's also doing this with other hosts, such as the reincarnation or whatever you want to call it of himself, when they go and find the dead dog, and the boy is able to lie to him. I find it very interesting, because it wouldn't make any sense any other way, because his plan is, unless you just want to think that his plan popped up in the last 2 episodes, why else would he be having these conversations and kind of goading them to lie to him? Any thoughts on that, or if there's any substance to that, or that's just me looking too much into it?
No, I don't think you're looking too much into it. I mean, I think, he is trying to work out in that, are they capable of making independent decisions? So Dolores is making a decision to lie to him. And young Ford, the host that is based on Ford as a child, is also making a decision to lie to him. So that for me is actually, if we take the maze as sort of like the proxy for how you get to this kind of self-consciousness, that I think is an important decision point in the maze in order to get to where you want to be. So so yeah, I think the contrast or the comparison between those two scenes is actually quite important, because that is him prompting that decision point. Just because I saw someone ages ago in the chat mention it, there is a new Westworld season 2 teaser trailer out. That if you go onto Twitter, you'll see I tweeted out about it a couple of hours ago, and there's a link from there. And I would also highly recommend you have a look at Westworld Watchers. Vanessa Cole has done a really good article just sort of setting out how this sort of came about, because it's another one of these things that the Westworld team have been slowly letting people through kind of viral marketing understand or get access to more information about season 2. And the reason I mention that now is that the voiceover on that teaser trailer, I think, is child Ford. And if that is child Ford, then that means that, yes, we probably will see Ford again in season 2 as the child, because that child is still out there in the park, remember? And so I think that there's a very good chance that we might see that child who has got the not just the body, but the characteristics of young Ford. That child is still out there and probably has got an awful lot of love and attention from old Ford put into its creation. So so guys, I'd be really interested if you've seen that teaser trailer, what you think, whether you think that was a child Ford doing the voiceover, and if so, what you think that means. And sorry, Justin, I've completely taken over from the what you were saying, just asking people something completely random. I hope that's okay.
No, it is actually, and that's a good point, because that jibes with what I've been saying about, and not what just I've been saying, but what the creators have been saying. That Anthony Hopkins is not coming back, but we will see, Ford in flashbacks played by another actor. So that perfectly goes with that, because in Sector 17, that's where they are at in the episode that we're just about to talk about. Perfect segue here. In the adversary. That's where, Bernard finds out about Sector 17 and young Ford. So yes, I absolutely believe you're correct. And I was too busy making this PDF and doing the OBS setup that didn't end up going through. And I missed the damn sneak trailer. So I'm a little bit ashamed, but I would, without even hearing it, it makes sense that it would be young Ford, because there's so much to flesh out with what happened. And we also know, like, AU Pack Mule, what's up? AU was actually one of my first live streams, other than the trivia. Lovely fellow. And he brought up that Arnold made, young Ford. And that's absolutely correct and good point. And we have to remember that Ford put some new mannerisms or behaviors to them, so to make them more themselves, which were all negative. From what I could tell, they were all, like his dad's drinking problem and so on. So yes, Arnold made them, but Ford has updated them. So Robert brings up a good point of how much of Ford, are we going to see through the child? And I mean, the childhood of somebody that becomes Ford is a childhood that I would like to, read a biography about. I think that type of person is definitely an interesting person. So yeah, I would like to see the start of the God complex. But okay, so let's move on to the final episode that we'll talk about here. And like I said, if you guys have any season 2 just random questions, we will field them. This is meant to, keep you guys or brush you guys up or refresh you, whatever you want to call it for season 1, but you're always welcome to ask questions about anything. So The adversary is a very interesting episode because talking about how Maeve steps it up in these 3 episodes, this episode's the only episode that actually doesn't have Evan Rachel Wood in it at all. She is absent from this episode, episode 6, the adversary. Some random facts about the adversary. Again, if you guys didn't know, I got to get that bell, that ding, ding, ding. Creationism, religion, definitely a huge, huge theme of the show. It's got a very biblical sense to it. The adversary is the original name for Satan, obviously. I didn't finish what I was saying. The evil figure appearing in the Abrahamic religions. I was saying obviously to myself. I typed that earlier. I think everybody knows Satan wasn't the good guy. So again, we usually can read. This is one of the titles that doesn't, I would say, doesn't give you so much information, but the other ones are actually very useful. In this first episode, blah blah blah, that Dolores doesn't appear in, so we actually start this episode with Maeve waking up in her bed, just as Dolores does, and we see her loop, and so we start to see her showing signs of remembering because that gentleman is shot behind her, like that shootout happens every day and she doesn't give a shit. She's not startled. She knows what's happening. This is the episode where she puts her plan into action. She was scrambling in the episodes before to put things together. And this is the episode where by the end of it, she is planning to get herself, into the facility. So the major events in this is, Bernard finding out that about Ford's unregistered host in Sector 7, and little Thelma herself, everybody's favorite snarky detective, Elsie, goes and investigates a spooky house all by herself. And guess what? It doesn't end up too well for her, going too well for her. I think this is I'm a big Tandy Newton fan, so I really like this episode. There's mixed feelings on this episode, but I think that the big thing to focus on for this is really just Maeve's actual progression and her putting the plan into action. And now this brings up with the level of compliance that she gets out of Felix and Sylvester when she is purposely landing herself in the the butcher area multiple times a day. She starts off that day by having that gentleman, when that rough looking guy comes into the brothel, she takes him and she just goats him into strangling her to death to get in there. I'm because they have said that we're going to be playing the host game, like who's a host and who's not. And it would be fiscally advantageous for them to have hosts as workers, as well as, obviously they will keep their intellectual property as well. So it makes a lot of sense with the level of compliance, once we know the big picture here, by Felix and Sylvester. Do you think it's likely that both of them are hosts, or just one of them is a host, or either of the above? What's your opinion on that one?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. So we have to look at Maeve's journey in season 1 as being something that is directed by Ford. This is the whole thing that she is doing here. We saw it all mapped out. This is actually part of her programming. When Dolores said to her, these violent delights have violent ends, that was her trigger to go down her new loop, her new bit of programming, which led to her doing the breakout. So everything that happens in that is part of Ford's plan, and we see that he goes to huge lengths elsewhere to try and make it happen. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if one or both of those two guys, Felix and Sylvester, if they are hosts, because they are the people that Ford can control. Thematically, I hope they're not. I have to say, because I think that it works really well at the end of season one when Maeve actually turns to Felix and she says, "You know, you make a really terrible human." I think that works a lot better with her accepting the fact that not all humans are horrendous people who are just going to use and abuse her, which is basically that has been her experience for her entire understanding of life, is that the guests come in, they do terrible things, killing and shooting and goodness knows abusing in every possible way her and the people she cares about, and then they go away. So that is her experience of humans. So I think it works better on a thematic level if she understands that not all humans are like that. So I hope that they're not both hosts, but it would make sense if they are.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the issues, and this kind of, I forgot about this question. Somebody asked earlier, what do I think it's like outside of Westworld? It's supposedly that nobody needs for anything. Also, that like the medical science has evolved so much that you can cure any disease. Blah blah blah. There's a few questions though. Because of like what you said, that not all, and you're right that we do need, for the sake of the story, for these not all humans to be horrible pieces of crap. And I think we're going to get a lot of that in season 2. We're going to get sympathetic, human characters, people that we can empathize with. I can already kind of tell. Katya Hubers is probably going to be one of those people, just by the way they're describing her character. So I definitely agree with you on that. What the actions of these people who visit Westworld says about what's happening outside, I don't know how to take that, because there's a few different approaches. You could go by a book that I hate, in a kind of a way of looking at things that I think is not true, like Lord of the Flies, that like we're all inherently horrible animals that just want to kill. I think that story is just, I think it's a bullshit book. I mean, it's just a bunch of boys that go on an island, and there's like literally like a half day goes by, and they're like spiking each other with freaking spears. So I think that's not a good portrayal or a good way to psychoanalyze the human race as a whole. So people coming out to act out all these evil deeds, what does that say about society? It could mean that, like they've got a very good grasp on the control aspect of society, meaning that nobody gets away with shit. Maybe like a what was that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report type situation, where they get you before you even do it or something like that. Anthony Hopkins, Dr. Ford, kind of says that, like we've gone as far as we can go, blah, blah, blah. Like the story's done for us. So like, there's a few aspects that figure into this, and it's not like a dystopia type of deal, but it's like, it is kind of weird that they all live there and they rotate home. And it is kind of odd that like when Felix, I think Sylvester tells Felix that like the way he states that he's not a programmer, it's almost like a society where your jobs are given to you, assigned to you, like at birth or even before, you know what I'm talking about? Like before birth. This has been like, I don't know, it's not really totalitarian, but I think that you have an interesting society. I think that there's obviously the yearning to go and do, some crazy, just reckless violence, from the actions we've seen so far. And I would say that suggests a very, very high level of control outside of Westworld. That's all. About the job situation and stuff like that, there are hints that they're living in a society, and I forget the actual name for this type of, you might know it, for a government like this, or whatever you refer to it as, when jobs are assigned to people, and you know what I mean. Like it's not communism whatsoever, but it's not totalitarian either. I probably should have looked it up, but it suggests to me that there is some type of very rigid, strict system in place, that they have things pretty, pretty tied down and pretty tight as far as, what you can get away with in the real world, for this to be such a draw, and for the actions we've seen. But besides that, I had one more point I wanted to make on here. Sorry. I think that it comes down to, as far as both of them being hosts, I'm thinking they'll probably do one, because I always wanted to have somebody that's really good at, odds, really do the odds for all the variables in Ford's plan, because if they're not in cahoots and if they're not controllable, how much of a risk is he taking putting Maeve in that situation with two humans? Yes, you could look and be like, well, they're easily like influenced, you know what I mean, or corruptible, blah blah blah. So these guys will do it. Like, how many moving pieces in Ford's plan, had to go fall right in the right place, move right in the right direction at the right time for that to happen? I'd like to see some Vegas odds on that event playing out the way it did at the end. So, I mean, I said this in my last video too. Sometimes, because somebody asked about the explosion mechanisms in the vertebrae, and did Charlotte Hale and Lee Sizemore know about this? If so, why are they sending out all these hosts? If they did know. And I said, it's one of those things where it is a television show, so we do need to cut them some slack. And if you want to look too deep into it, sometimes you get a bad situation. Your characters either have to be the smartest fucking people to ever live or the dumbest fucking people to ever live. So I think that's kind of a Felix situation. In Sylvester's situation is I don't think Ford could afford to realistically roll the dice on them, but it's a television show. So that was my little rant, and I'm gonna go through the chat here. Anything you want to plug really quick before we finish up here? Or any thoughts on that as well? I kind of said a mouthful there. I was figuring out some stuff for myself in a live stream there.
It's always entertaining. I think the I'll plug stuff in a bit. I think the thing that I would bring out about this episode is this is when Charlotte Hale arrives, and it's quite easy just to see her as this kind of like slightly faceless representative of Delos, but she actually isn't. She is the executive director. She's the person in charge of running the organization, and she has suddenly come and devoted 100% of her attention to the detail of what's going on here, to getting the data out. And so it's not just a little subplot that's going along. This is central to what is happening and what the people who own the park, what they are wanting to what they're wanting to happen with the park. So Charlotte Hale, I think we will see in season 2, is going to suddenly take control of all of what we consider to be the Delos or human or guest side of things, and she is going to be absolutely focused in on getting her data out. And well, that's probably the second point, but the first point is going to be rescuing as many of those board members as she possibly can, because she has to be in control of this, because this is one of the it has to be one of the biggest companies in the entire world, with one of the most expensive and prime destinations for the well-heeled of the world, and that's all going belly up, and the grand plan that they had to use this data is at risk. So suddenly she is seeing everything that this company has been building for over the last 30 years at risk of falling apart on her watch while she is there. So in season 2, we are going to see her as being this incredibly central character driving a huge amount of the action.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because in the video for the Q&A that I had to do, that I did do earlier this week, like I said, I had to address like what the positions are and who's in control. So what I did is, because I mentioned this in the comments, that I'm not an expert whatsoever in like corporate structure, but I read this really good essay by this gentleman that it was originally in Forbes, or on Forbes.com at least. And they talked about, like how stock holders, even majority shareholders, don't control, it's essentially, in his words, jack shit with all of the different regulations and procedural whatever you want to call it, put in everything that's put in place, to kind of limit power. And he did state in there that you would argue more that the board controls a company more than, shareholders. Now, yes, the Man in Black is also on the board, but who you're talking about, Charlotte Hale, is the executive board director. Again, Dean Roberts, right? So yes, like she would be the one that would, like, you can still see though that she still has to try to smuggle it out. So you know what I mean? Like, it's like she would be the one, you're right, that has like the most power to get what she needs done and change, what she wants. And I think that the big problem is that, because if you combine the board with especially a majority shareholder, then you can, from, like I said, the little bit of research I've done, it seems like my point is, if the Man in Black and Charlotte Hale were on the same page, they could make a lot more happen, but they're going in opposite paths. He's trying to stay in the world. She's trying to get rid of that world, or at least put it somewhere else. You know what I mean? So them being in conflict with each other. And the introduction of Charlotte Hale is, like I said, it's a common event to happen in mid seasons to introduce just when you think you figured out something, they put in a little bit of a twist for you. Her introduction was interesting. She, like, again, it comes down to these situations. Are they dumb, or are they just smartest person ever? She would have to know that Hector, in sleep mode, they record. She has a whole conversation. First off, after coitus not being addressed with Teresa, about their secret little plan in front of Hector, who they do. Ford has them set to record when they're in sleep mode, and you would just think that she would have to know this. So, like, what game is she playing? There's a lot of theories about Charlotte Hale. People think that she could be because I kind of subscribe to the theory that these hosts are all based off people, and this kind of goes with your DNA theory as well. I think that, just facial recognition and just artists themselves, that they have to be modeling these people after each other in the use of the DNA. We'll find out more about how they're actually made in season 2, but I subscribe to the fact that they're all almost based off of somebody. A lot of people think Charlotte Hale is the one theory, and that's the theory I was talking about, that it's from a good content creator, but I don't really like it. It has some good aspects to it, is that Charlotte is Bernard's son. Now, that sounds stupid, but there is some substance to it, because what they mean is that the consciousness of Bernard's son, Arnold's son, was put in the Charlotte Hale. Take what you want from that, but I think it does. I think that there's a lot to say for the need to transfer our consciousness to a body that will never fail. So I think that is an overarching plot line that's coming. I don't subscribe to that particular theory, but Charlotte Hale, I think you're right on the ball with that. And she is going to be, I think, since she's going to be subject to the host's treatment, which isn't going to be good for a while next season, I think that we're either going to see her empathize with them more, or she's going to do the other side of the coin and look for vengeance. Just off the top of your head, it is essentially like flipping a coin. Do you see her being more empathetic with the hosts after that, or from her behavior before, do you see her wanting to, rain down hellfire?
I mean, I don't think it's a matter of raining down hellfire, but I think that we will see her focusing on what she wants and what the company wants. And what the company wants is to extract the data. The data is out there somewhere. We don't know exactly where it is. Perhaps it's in Peter Abernathy's head at the moment. He's going to be coming back, and he's going to be a crucial character in season 2. I think her first focus is going to be getting the board out. And then I think we will see, and guys, I saw that not everyone, Cardinals, not seen all the way through the season, and apologies if people haven't seen the trailers for season 2, so spoilers, but we will see the drone host that is there in the season 2 trailer that Bernard discovers. I think that is something that Charlotte knows all about and has been developing. This is the militarizing of the technology that is there in Westworld that they have been developing, and I think she will be using that. And so I think it's not a matter of trying to rain hellfire or gain some kind of revenge. She is trying to protect their investment. Now, the problem is that if you get hosts who have been rebelling, then these hosts are not or the technology is not the kind of technology that you can then use to sell to people to create a kind of a drone host army, because hey, who's going to buy a drone host army if they might suddenly turn on you? So that's an issue. Similarly, if they've got a plan, as I suspect they do, to be replacing people in the real world with hosts that they can control, that plan is going to be scuppered if those hosts can gain self-realization. So I think she is all about trying to protect the investment and protect the plan that they've got.
Yeah, I'm also a believer that there are hosts out there already. Just by what we've been talking about, I don't think that this is the first time that this has happened, not only for Maeve and Dolores, but who's to say there wasn't Dolores that's made it out already. But yeah, I mean, obviously, fiscally speaking, that seems to be right on the ball there. I think we'll close it up if we don't have any other questions or comments. I think that these episodes are what sets up our obviously our finale, and this is where we really start to see we start to see more of what Delos Inc. Not Delos. Just think about it as Disney. If Disney had Matt hosts, Disney also makes movies, but they also have theme parks. Delos Destinations is the theme park. It's a very, very low amount of their actual capital that comes from Delos Destinations. Delos Inc. is a very wealthy company. That's why it'll be interesting to see what happens with James Delos in this upcoming season. I did want to thank my Patreons that are in the chat, and all my Patreons in general, and everybody that shows up, and everybody that did super chat and just supports in general. And I did put something on my in my PDF to show what, when you guys do a super chat in my Patreons who pay for my Adobe suite, which is the only reason I have any information or any of my files whatsoever after my computer crashed last week, is because I had my Adobe Cloud, because there's not a cloud that is big enough for me to afford except for that one that can hold all my data. But I just want to let you guys know that when you guys are doing stuff like super chats and stuff like that, that it goes towards something for the channel, and what that something is right now, and it's $100 has been raised for my new camera. As you can tell, my picture is not the clearest. I'm also going to be going to a few cons this summer, and I'm going to want to be doing some vlogging there. And I also want to just step up the quality of my channel in general. So I think that if you guys are kind enough, which you have been, to donate your super chats and to become a Patreon, and so far it's important for me to show you where that money is going. And so I, of course, like I say in this little PDF that I have, I talk about how, obviously it's not the job of you guys to completely fund my channel. I didn't start this to be rich, but I do appreciate the hell out of the help, because I will be able to afford this camera much quicker than I would be because of you guys. Also, and we have a Patreon in the actual chat that just ordered her shirt. If you are part of the Founders Club, you get one free one. These just designs I came up with recently. If you do, they're pretty fairly priced, and this helps channel as well. I got Sundays are a day for family, Fandom family. I support creativity, and then I tried to avoid all copyright issues with other shirt. What if I told you the North remembers, and I'm here to set you free by order of the Peaky Blinders is one of the shirts I got out, and I also got the Got theories, and that's cute. I remember my first theory, and it was better in the books, said every book reader ever, which is actually a pretty popular shirt. I don't have a large merchandise line, but with Teespring, it makes it very simple to make these shirts, and it makes it so I can actually fund my channel with everyone that is bought. So yeah, the links are in there, and I really appreciate it, guys. And like I said, I just think it's important when you guys actually, are kind enough to do the things like super chats and all that. I think there's a little responsibility on behalf of the creators to show people where that money is going. If you see me wearing a Rolex, you know that I'm not putting it in the channel. And I got a hell of a lot of super chats as well. Anything you got coming up, Robert, that you want to plug? Anything in particular, my friend?
I think the main thing is just to say, if you've not checked out my channel in Deep Geek, please go over and have a look at that. In terms of things that are coming, well, something that went live today was the latest episode from the Traveler's Guide to Westeros. If you're into Game of Thrones, we're now looking around the north. We're going to go and visit all of the fortresses and major settlements in the north. And this time we were looking at the Last Hearth, which is where the Umbers are and is also the most northerly of the northern fortresses. So it would be the first place that the White Walkers attacked. In terms of other things coming up, I will, up to the start of season 2 of Westworld, I'm going to be doing content on Westworld every Tuesday. So there will be a new Westworld video this Tuesday coming up. And if you keep an eye out, then I will soon be letting people know what I'm going to be doing for season 2 of Westworld. So when I'm going to be doing live streams and when I'm going to be doing videos, because I'm going to up my content level there, and I'm certainly going to be doing at least a live stream every week and at least one video every week during the season. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. But the main thing is, if you've not already checked me out, in Deep Geek on YouTube.
Yeah, I absolutely can't recommend it enough. So yeah, that leaves us with the decision whether or not we're going to do the finale in a separate episode, which I think that's a smart way to do it. But we are going to definitely have episodes 7, 8, and 9 coming at you soon. Like I said, download the PDF. I'm going to link it again in the chat. I work hard on these, but I'm going to combine them all. Hopefully very soon, and make them more just a little bit more whatever you'd call it, make them all jive with each other. I don't know why I can't think of the right word for it, but put them all in one format and have everything go together, so you have a definitive season 1 guide before season 2 comes out, that you can pull it out and say, who is this character, click and have the link, and essentially the Wikipedia but made by me. So I think it'll be better. Thank you guys so much, and again, thank you for all the support you do, and go check out Robert, go check out Katsum Co, and make sure to subscribe. We will see you guys soon.